You know, pumpkin carving was supposed to be a wholesome fall activity. Some candles, some creativity, maybe a mild threat of tetanus. Strap in. This is the part of Halloween where arts and crafts meet emergency response. 1. Every Halloween, at least one person decides that the best way to speed up pumpkin carving is with power tools. Forget kitchen knives. This guy went full Home Depot meets Hellraiser and tried to hollow out his jack-o'-lantern with a cordless drill. It went about as well as you'd expect. Pumpkin pulp in his hair, seeds in his ceiling fan, and a jack-o'-lantern that looked like it had been in a gang fight. The end result was less spooky art project and more CSI Garden Center. Somewhere between the third splatter and the fourth stripped screw, he realized maybe, just maybe, pumpkins weren't meant to experience industrial torque. Honestly, the drill survived. The pumpkin didn't. Neither did his dignity. 2. You know you've made a mistake when your Halloween decorations require a fire extinguisher. One woman carved a pumpkin, put a candle inside, and placed it lovingly on her front porch, directly beneath her hanging fake cobwebs. 10 minutes later, she created the world's first seasonal arson. Neighbors thought it was part of the ambiance until the roof started glowing like the world's angriest jack-o'-lantern. The fire department showed up to what looked like a satanic bake sale. Her official statement? It looked pretty for a second. And that's how you know Darwin is still doing quality control. 3. Somewhere in Ohio, a man tried to make his pumpkin interactive. He installed a motion sensor and a Bluetooth speaker so it would scream when people walked by. Cute in theory, until it malfunctioned at 3 a.m. and started shrieking, "Get out!" every 30 seconds for 6 straight hours. The neighbors called the police thinking there was an exorcism gone wrong. By the time he woke up, the pumpkin was surrounded by flashing lights, an angry HOA president, and one traumatized raccoon. The moral? If your pumpkin needs a software update, you've gone too far. 4. A couple thought carving a pumpkin together would be romantic. It was not. Within minutes, they were arguing over artistic vision like two drunk Picassos in a produce aisle. She wanted cute and classic. He wanted terrifying and realistic. They compromised by creating something that looked like a dental experiment gone rogue. The breakup happened halfway through carving the mouth, which, poetically, was also when they both sliced their fingers. Nothing says true love like a pumpkin that doubles as a crime scene and an open wound. 5. Some people are bad at measuring scale. A man in Kansas thought it would be hilarious to carve his pumpkin using a samurai sword. Apparently, he wanted to feel like a Halloween anime protagonist. Within seconds, the sword was stuck halfway through the pumpkin, and he was stuck trying to explain to paramedics how his decorative katana ended up embedded in a squash. The sword was fine, but his ego, much like his pumpkin, was split wide open. The ER nurse reportedly just muttered, "We see this every year," which raises more questions than it answers. 6. Somewhere in suburbia, a mom decided to make pumpkin carving educational for her kids. She handed them each a butter knife and told them it would teach patience. It did not. Within minutes, her dining room looked like the aftermath of a pie-filling explosion. One child was crying, one was sticky enough to qualify as a flytrap, and the third was attempting to wear the pumpkin as a helmet. The final product resembled the world's first jack-o'-lantern to fail kindergarten. The only thing they learned that day was how to ruin a tablecloth beyond salvation. 7. Every neighborhood has that guy, the one who thinks Halloween is a competitive sport. This man spent 8 hours sculpting an intricate dragon into a pumpkin. It was stunning, truly museum-worthy, until the temperature dropped overnight and the pumpkin collapsed into itself like a sad medieval souffle. By morning, it looked less like a dragon and more like a melted orange puddle of regret. He posted a photo of the disaster on Facebook anyway, claiming it was intentional decay art. Sure, buddy, that's one way to spell denial. 8. One teenager decided to make his pumpkin go viral. His plan? Fill it with dry ice and soda for a fog bomb effect. It worked beautifully, for about 3 seconds. Then it detonated like a fruity grenade, covering half the driveway and his mother's Honda in pulpy shrapnel. He posted the explosion online anyway. The internet loved it. His mom did not. To this day, the car still smells faintly of orange and disappointment. 9. In an act of misguided creativity, one family decided to paint their pumpkins instead of carving them. Safer and cleaner, they said. Unfortunately, they used acrylic spray paint. The next day, their porch was decorated with several highly flammable pumpkins gleaming like radioactive oranges. When the sun hit them just right, it looked like the house was trying to signal an alien rescue mission. The neighbors called it modern art. The HOA called it a hazard. The fire marshal called it Tuesday. 10. A guy thought carving pumpkins in the bathtub would make cleanup easier. Technically, he was right. Practically, he created the most horrifying scene ever witnessed outside a horror movie. He forgot to remove the pumpkin guts before letting them go down the drain, clogging his plumbing so badly that his bathroom started smelling like decomposing produce. When the plumber arrived, he reportedly said, "Oh good, another festive idiot." Nothing like paying $400 to learn that pumpkins and plumbing don't mix. 11. Somewhere in Oregon, a man decided to carve a pumpkin underwater. Yes, underwater. He said it was for the challenge. He even wore scuba gear and filmed the whole thing for YouTube. The video mostly consists of muffled screaming, floating seeds, and a man realizing that visibility through pumpkin guts is not great for breathing apparatuses. He surfaced triumphantly, holding what looked like an orange blob that had survived a blender attack. The video got 300 views. His shame got 30,000. 12. There's always one person who thinks their pet should help. A woman tried to let her cat participate by pawing the pumpkin. 5 seconds later, the cat decided it was under attack and launched a full-scale assault. The result? 1 destroyed pumpkin, 1 shredded arm, and 1 feline who spent the rest of the day glaring from the top of the fridge like a furry warlord. She posted the photo online with the caption, "Whiskers made this." Yes, made it bleed. 13. In 2018, a group of college students attempted to host a pumpkin carving and wine night. As it turns out, nothing pairs worse with sharp objects than boxed Chardonnay. One student passed out mid-carve, another tried to light their pumpkin with a candle still in its packaging, and a third used a steak knife to fix the symmetry, and ended up slicing through the tablecloth and the table. The landlord called it property damage. They called it fall vibes. 14. A man in Maine tried to carve his pumpkin using only his feet. His words, "I wanted to connect spiritually with the squash." 10 minutes later, he connected spiritually with a tetanus shot. The final design looked like a toddler's attempt at abstract art, if the toddler had a grudge against geometry. He uploaded the photo to Instagram with the caption, "Nas too talented." The CDC commented, "Please stop." 15. A woman tried to create a glamorous pumpkin by bedazzling it with rhinestones and glitter glue. 3 hours later, she'd glued half the jewels to her kitchen counter and 1 to her cat. The pumpkin itself looked like it was auditioning for RuPaul's Drag Race, Produce Edition. It was less spooky, more Vegas residency. She tried to peel off a gem, which removed half the pumpkin's skin in the process. Congratulations, you've invented exfoliating decor. 16. There was a viral TikTok challenge where people carved pumpkins while blindfolded. One participant took it to heart, fully committed, and ended up carving her dining table instead. She proudly removed the blindfold, expecting applause, and instead found a pumpkin sitting perfectly untouched beside a table that now resembled modern art. The comment section called it a metaphor for life. Her landlord called it an invoice. 17. Finally, the man who tried to carve a pumpkin with a flamethrower. Because apparently carving with knives is too mainstream, he claimed it would create cleaner lines. What it actually created was an orange fireball visible from space. The pumpkin disintegrated instantly, and he ended up with eyebrows that looked permanently surprised. Firefighters arrived and reportedly said, "We didn't know we needed a seasonal division." He still insists it was worth it for the footage. Humanity, ladies and gentlemen, setting produce on fire for likes. 18. There's something profoundly confident about a man who believes his pumpkin should stand out from the crowd, so he fills it with glow sticks instead of candles. He cracked 10 of them open, dumped the glowing liquid inside, and proudly declared it his nuclear pumpkin. 10 minutes later, the chemical reaction ate through the rind and started dripping neon goo all over his porch. His neighbors thought he'd built a meth lab. By the time he realized glow sticks are not rated for interior produce lighting, the pumpkin had collapsed into something that looked like Chernobyl's arts and crafts project. He posted a photo with the caption, "Science is awesome." The comments section politely disagreed. 19. Every Halloween, someone thinks it's a great idea to carve a pumpkin while drunk. One woman decided to relax with a bottle of wine and just see what happens. What happened was a jack-o'-lantern with one eye, no nose, and a mouth shaped like an existential crisis. She said it represented the chaos of modern femininity. Her husband said it represented 3 glasses of Pinot Grigio and a total disregard for safety. The next morning, she found out she'd used a serrated bread knife, carved half the design into the countertop, and baked her car keys inside the pumpkin. Martha Stewart would have wept blood. 20. I once saw a man carve a pumpkin using only a chainsaw. He said it was efficient, which is a fascinating word choice for an activity that ended with his driveway covered in orange mush and his jack-o'-lantern looking like it had been mugged by a lumberjack. He proudly lit it anyway, and the vibration from the chainsaw gouges caused it to collapse like a dying lung. He called it performance art. His wife called it a $200 deposit we're not getting back. Either way, he invented the first pumpkin that's legally considered a workplace accident. 21. Somewhere in suburban Pennsylvania, a dad decided his pumpkin needed texture. Instead of carving it, he used a blowtorch to etch the surface. For a few seconds, it looked amazing. Then the pumpkin caught fire, and so did his patio umbrella. His kids screamed, the neighbors clapped, and the local fire department now refers to it as the Great Gourd Incident. When reporters asked what happened, he told them it was an experimental art piece, which is apparently dad code for, I almost burned down the house again. 22. Every year, someone tries to make their pumpkin anatomically correct. It always starts with an innocent idea, give it teeth, maybe eyes, and somehow ends with something that looks like it crawled straight out of an HR nightmare. One guy carved a full human face onto his pumpkin, complete with wrinkles, gums, and what he described as realistic eye moisture. It was horrifying. It didn't look spooky. It looked like it was alive and had opinions. Trick-or-treaters avoided his house. Even his Ring doorbell refused to record footage near it. 23. You can always count on engineers to ruin fun with precision. One carved his pumpkin using a laser cutter, insisting it was the safest and most efficient method. It was safe until the pumpkin's juices short-circuited the machine, sending sparks flying like a 4th of July protest. His garage filled with smoke, his pumpkin was half evaporated, and he discovered the hard way that produce doesn't have a high heat tolerance. But at least his pumpkin had perfect symmetry. Nothing says spooky like a $3,000 geometry lesson. 24. A woman once decided to carve her pumpkin into the shape of her ex-boyfriend's face. She said it was therapeutic. Therapy apparently involves stabbing the same area repeatedly for emotional closure. The pumpkin didn't survive, but neither did his reputation. She posted a photo captioned, "Finally cut him out of my life." It went viral. Somewhere out there, a man is explaining to his coworkers why his face was trending under Ujigram seasonal revenge. 25. One man's pumpkin was so aggressively bad, it actually scared people. Not because it was spooky, but because it looked like it was decomposing before he even finished carving. Turns out, he left it in his car for 3 days before cutting into it, and by the time he got started, it had the consistency of wet bread. He still went through with it, proudly declaring, "It builds character." What it built was an ecosystem. By morning, the pumpkin was hosting a small fruit fly rave and emitting a smell that could legally qualify as chemical warfare. 26. Every office has one overachiever. This year, someone in accounting brought a 3D printed pumpkin to the company Halloween contest. No carving, no mess, just pure plastic smugness. They called it the future of Halloween. Everyone else called it cheating. The pumpkin looked like it was made by an AI trying to understand emotions. Technically perfect, spiritually bankrupt. The next day, someone filled it with pudding and left it on their chair. Justice was served. Literally. 27. A guy once tried to carve his pumpkin while live streaming for his followers. He spent 2 hours giving motivational advice about embracing creativity. Then, at the grand finale, his carving knife slipped and went straight through the pumpkin into his hand. He screamed, dropped the phone, and the live stream ended with viewers staring at a ceiling fan and the faint sound of someone realizing that content creation sometimes means creating medical content. The comments were split between concern and, "Bro, did you die?" 28. Some people have vision, others have glue guns. DIY influencer decided to reinvent pumpkin carving by gluing rhinestones all over hers instead of cutting. Unfortunately, she forgot to let the glue cool, so the jewels slowly slid off overnight like a horror movie in reverse. By morning, her glamorous pumpkin looked like it was melting under the pressure of its own bad decisions. She blamed humidity. Everyone else blamed karma for crimes against glitter. Number 29. A couple tried carving a pumpkin with their toddler for memories. What they got instead was a tiny human covered in pulp, a living room that looked like a vegetable massacre, and a jack-o'-lantern that somehow had 4 mouths. The kid lost interest halfway through and started eating the seeds raw. The parents proudly said, "He's creative." Yeah, so are raccoons. The final photo showed them smiling through despair, holding a pumpkin that looked like it had seen things. 30. One guy decided he wanted to make his pumpkin float. He hollowed it out, sealed it with wax, and set it adrift in his backyard pool with a candle inside. Within minutes, it capsized, the candle went out, and the melted wax glued the pumpkin to his filter system. He spent the next 2 hours scooping orange sludge out of the water while muttering, "It was supposed to be serene." Nothing says serenity like pool repair bills and self-loathing. 31. A group of frat guys decided to carve pumpkins using baseball bats. Because apparently, subtlety is for people who pass midterms. They lined up a dozen pumpkins in the yard, took turns swinging, and called it pumpkin baseball. 5 minutes later, someone broke a window, someone else twisted an ankle, and one very confused neighbor called 911 to report a produce-based riot. The pumpkins didn't survive, but their group chat still does, mostly to share memes about court dates. 32. There's a special kind of person who treats Halloween as a chance to go big or go home. One man bought a 300-pound pumpkin and spent 2 days hollowing it out with a snow shovel. He claimed it was worth it for the neighborhood. The pumpkin eventually rolled off his porch, crushed a garden gnome, and split open like an overripe melon in front of a horrified crowd of children. He told the kids it was part of the show. They'll be in therapy till Christmas. 33. Someone thought it'd be adorable to carve their pumpkin into the shape of Baby Yoda. It was not adorable. It looked like a possessed avocado with cataracts. The internet, of course, loved it. Comments like, "Kill it with fire," and "Why is it moist?" poured in by the thousands. The creator said the backlash hurt his feelings. Which is fair, but honestly, he did make something that looked like it would whisper Latin in your sleep. 34. Finally, a Florida man, because, of course, decided to carve a pumpkin using live alligators. His plan was to go viral, and he succeeded, mostly because everyone was waiting to see if he'd lose a limb. He dangled the pumpkin in front of 2 gators, hoping they'd bite artistically. They did not. They just ate it, entirely. The video ends with him looking betrayed, saying, "That's not how I pictured it." Florida remains undefeated in the ongoing war between man and nature, and pumpkins. 35. You'd think by now people would understand that pumpkin carving and electricity don't mix, but no. Someone tried to plug fairy lights inside the pumpkin while it was still wet, sitting in a puddle on the porch. He called it eco-friendly illumination. I call it an attempted science experiment by Dr. Frankenstein's less competent cousin. The lights shorted out instantly, sparks flew, and his pumpkin went from festive to electrified orange death orb. He's lucky he only blew the circuit breaker. His wife said it was a learning experience. Yeah, the lesson was, electricity and gourds don't make friends. The whole house smelled like burnt squash and regret. 36. Somewhere in Iowa, a man carved his pumpkin using a pressure washer. His logic: high pressure equals high precision. What he got instead was a jet-powered puree session that turned his driveway into a Jackson Pollock painting made of vegetable pulp. He tried to convince his family it was abstract. They convinced him to hose down the sidewalk for 2 hours. The final pumpkin didn't even exist. It had vaporized. I've seen ghosts with more structural integrity. 37. A guy on TikTok decided to carve his pumpkin while skydiving. He thought it'd be epic content. What it was 30 seconds of screaming, orange chunks flying past the camera, and one airborne pumpkin that briefly achieved sentience before exploding on impact with the Earth. He landed safely. The pumpkin didn't. NASA later confirmed the impact crater was impressive. Somewhere out there, an insurance agent is still trying to process the phrase pumpkin-related terminal velocity incident. 38. One woman wanted to make her pumpkin family-themed, so she carved faces of her kids into them using a photo stencil app. The result? 3 horrifyingly realistic orange children glowing from the lawn like they'd been possessed by the spirit of Photoshop. Trick-or-treaters didn't even approach the house. One kid threw his candy bucket and ran. She said it was wholesome. No, it looked like a deleted scene from Hereditary. Even the family dog wouldn't look them in the eye. 39. A man decided to carve his pumpkin with his car. He set it on the driveway, revved the engine, and thought the tires would make a perfect circle cut. What he actually made was a high-speed squash massacre. The pumpkin exploded, the driveway was ruined, and he spent 3 days explaining to his insurance company why there was vegetable DNA embedded in his bumper. They asked if it was intentional. He said yes. They closed his account immediately. 40. Every workplace has that one guy who takes seasonal spirit too far. This one carved a pumpkin at his desk using company tools, a box cutter, a stapler, and pure delusion. The office reeked of pumpkin guts and midlife crisis. He proudly lit a candle inside using a match from the break room, which triggered the smoke detector and evacuated the entire building. HR called it a safety violation. Everyone else called it the most exciting meeting we've ever had. 41. A woman thought it would be cute to carve her pumpkin underwater in her koi pond. "It'll be like an aquatic display," she said. The koi immediately ate the pumpkin guts, choked, and had to be netted out by a horrified neighbor. She posted the aftermath online, captioned, "REP fishy, gone but festive." The internet was merciless. Turns out, no one wants to see Nemo meet his end via seasonal decor. 42. There's a man in Arizona who tried to make his pumpkin eco-conscious by filling it with birdseed so nature could enjoy it too. What nature enjoyed was a full-blown raccoon rave. By morning, his entire porch was a disaster zone. Pumpkin shredded, furniture overturned, and one raccoon still sitting there with the haunted look of someone who saw too much. He said it was like a Disney movie. Yeah, if the Disney movie was The Purge, rodent edition. 43. Someone tried to carve their pumpkin using their laser hair removal device. "It's a precision laser," she said. "How different can it be?" The answer, very. The beam burned through the pumpkin in seconds, left scorch marks on the counter, and tripped the smoke alarm. She told the fireman it was a beauty experiment. He told her it was a cry for help. The pumpkin looked like it had survived atmospheric re-entry. 44. A guy wanted to make his pumpkin edgy, so he carved it into a political statement. Literally, carved words into the rind. The problem? He used a slogan that divided his entire neighborhood. By the end of the night, his yard was ground zero for a full-scale debate between costume-wearing suburban warriors. He started with one pumpkin and ended with 3 broken lawn chairs, a ruined fence, and a neighborhood watch meeting titled Seasonal Civility. Congratulations, he carved democracy, and it rotted in under 12 hours. 45. A woman thought carving a frozen pumpkin would make it easier. Spoiler alert, it didn't. She spent 40 minutes sawing at it like a Viking trying to invade an ice sculpture. When it finally cracked open, it exploded from the pressure and covered her kitchen in frozen orange shrapnel. The footage looks like a Mythbusters blooper reel. She described it as unexpected, which is how scientists describe volcanic eruptions. 46. There's always one person who thinks they can make pumpkin carving sexy. A couple filmed a tasteful adult-themed carving session for OnlyFans, calling it spooky and sensual. They forgot to turn off the candle inside the pumpkin. 5 minutes later, the wax started melting everywhere, and by the time they noticed, their set looked like the aftermath of an exorcism. They tried to pass it off as intentional horror vibes. The comments section disagreed. 47. A group of college kids tried to break the record for fastest pumpkin carving. They set up 10 pumpkins, 10 knives, and 0 plans. Within 2 minutes, 2 people were bleeding, 1 pumpkin was on fire, and another had vanished because someone kicked it out the window. The whole thing ended when the RA arrived and declared it a biohazard. Technically, they set a record for fastest way to ruin the dorm carpet. 48. Someone in Wisconsin hollowed out a massive pumpkin and used it as a kayak. Honestly, it worked for about 10 minutes. Then it started sinking. He refused to admit defeat and tried to bail water out with a ladle, like a man-defusing disaster with cutlery. Witnesses said he looked serene. I'd call it delusional buoyancy. The Coast Guard pulled him out and apparently just said, "Sir, you're not the first," which is somehow the saddest and funniest part. 49. A family decided to host a pumpkin carving competition with live commentary. Grandpa went rogue halfway through, pulled out a hunting knife, and muttered, "Back in my day, we used steel." 10 minutes later, he had carved something vaguely threatening, stabbed the table, and declared victory. Everyone applauded out of fear. They said it was wholesome family bonding. Sure, if your family bonding includes the phrase, "Is Grandpa okay?" 50. In a small town parade, someone mounted a giant pumpkin on their car hood as a decoration. Midway through the route, it detached and rolled down the street like a slow-motion apocalypse, scattering children and folding chairs in every direction. It finally came to rest in front of the mayor's booth. The crowd applauded. The driver claimed it was part of the show, and honestly, in that moment, it probably was. 51. And finally, the single dumbest pumpkin-related act in human history. A man tried to carve his pumpkin using another pumpkin. He hollowed out one, shoved a smaller one inside, and said, "Let nature carve itself." 10 minutes later, he was hammering one gourd into another while shouting, "Be artistic!" Neighbors called the cops because it sounded violent. When they arrived, he explained he was exploring organic symmetry. They took photos for evidence. He took one for Instagram. He captioned it, "Pumpkin versus pumpkin, nature always wins." Honestly, he's not wrong. Humanity's been losing to nature and common sense since the first time someone picked up a knife and said, "Let's make this vegetable scarier." And there you have it. Proof that humanity will weaponize vegetables for attention. Hit like, subscribe, and join me next time when we find out what other household objects humans can ruin in the name of creativity.